Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Factorio Friday Facts, number 417, this time Space Age Development. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for joining me. And this is honestly one of the best we've ever gotten. I know I pretty much say they're all really good, and I've said a lot of them are the best. But this one is good in different ways than pretty much any of the others have been, because this gives us a very behind the scenes look at the development from 3 years ago, basically, until now. And there's a few little tidbits that are kind of spoilers, maybe. I mean, they were pretty easy things to guess, but we do have some more confirmation now. And just some really interesting concepts, and kind of just getting to see how the devs have done stuff. And yet another testament to why and how and stuff that they are so good at this. They're such a great team. So we're going to jump in. It's pretty long. I'm going to summarize parts of it, but I don't want to summarize too much because like actually reading the whole text really brings a point across. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just so maybe you guys can try to read it too. And yeah, so we're written by Kovarex here. Starts off by saying, we usually show finished stuff in Friday Facts these days, but personally I always like to have a peek behind the curtains and see the temporary mess there. This motivated me to do some kind of overview of how the overall expansion development felt from my perspective. If you were like me, you might appreciate it. So basically, the story starts on Friday Facts 365, and we announced the plan to do the expansion pack, right? This was a long time ago. So the first year, this was started in 2021, if you can believe it. Creating the skeleton. Firstly, we focused on hiring, and the team was doubled to almost 30 people, with GFX department notably expanding from 2 to 8, which is huge, because in the past, the GFX parts of the game were usually the holdup, and that's not meant to be like an insult or anything. It was, it was only 2 people. But in the past, with other huge releases, usually the GFX stuff was kind of lagging behind. So it's fantastic to see that they, basically quadrupled the size of their GFX team. And then we go into creating the plan, a vertical slice. So essentially how they went about this is just creating like the most basic bare bones concepts, like implementing the most bare bones versions of the concepts they came up with in the game to kind of start to try to play with them and then iterate on them as they go. So basically, it involved a ton of discussion, a high level plan of the whole expansion and its systems. They want to iterate the design as soon as possible. We use the expression vertical slice. Basically, this was meant to be the most bare bones way, basically what I just said. And, essentially it turned out to be a really good idea. So they hired Arendelle, and he was keen on helping with the game design part. Because of his vast experience with modding and unprecedented productivity, he was always able to provide a fully working draft of the planet and its mechanic very fast. If possible, he often wrote some of the mechanics in Lua, and then later on they were translated to C++. Arendelle's drafts were always over the top when it comes to gameplay complexity. Gee, I'm so surprised. That's I mean, SpaceX is obviously a really complex and well done mod, but like it is pretty complex. So I I just find it funny that even the devs are like, yeah, it was maybe a little too complicated to start out with, but that's good because then they could refine it, right? And we usually started simplifying it to about half of its real size and then half again. But it was easier to shave off from a prototype, leaving the best bits rather than creating things from scratch. So yeah, even though Arendelle's were kind of maybe a little over complex, this is a good way to do it because I think with the approach they were taking, it's better to have something too complicated and shave off parts than to have something too simplistic and try to piecemeal, add bits to it. So I think this worked out well. So now we come to the planets. So the next thing to do was the planets, and most of the stuff relates to them in one way or the other, right? The class planet was created on the January 26th of 2021, so it's basically a few days before the first expansion pack announcement. We always knew we wanted to have an expansion base on different planets, so the support for independent services was in the game code for years already. And since mods were often using multiple services, it was reasonably tested too, which is good. At this time, we made the decision that planets will be prototype based and tightly related to the progression as opposed to exploration of semi-infinite randomly generated planets, which I think I do like this. It maybe has some drawbacks, but overall, I think that this was the right thing to do, especially as we see more and more of the expansion unfolding with these Friday Facts. We just decided on the main theme of each planet and started laying out the groundwork needed for that, like the possibility of, possibility to specify certain conditions of where certain recipes be crafted, different properties of the planets affecting things like solar panels, and also UI support to be able to switch between places and places comfortably. So I don't know if we've actually had confirmation yet that solar panels are less effective on some planets. There's been so many Friday facts, I truly don't remember, but I feel like we maybe didn't. It was hinted at with some stuff shown, but again, I may have missed it, but we do get that confirmation now. And then we go to space platforms, where the second most important part, obviously. And then elevator rails, they basically just knew elevator rails had to be into the game, so they started those like ASAP because they knew they'd be really complicated. And same with spoilables. And this is actually this is one thing I found pretty interesting, is apparently spoilables were started implemented in the first year. So 3 years ago, basically, this was implemented. I would not have guessed that. I think maybe it was kind of, I don't want to say deceiving, but maybe just the fact we got Gleba revealed last, and it seemed like there was still parts of it not quite done. I had the impression that like the whole planet and the spoilables part was only started like somewhat recently, like I don't know, the last 6 months or something. But it's interesting to see that that was actually one of the first things started. So you can tell there was probably a lot of thought and iteration put into it. So we move on to 2022, first playthrough prototype. So after a year, they had another update, which was 367. And this was when we had like a year of basically no Friday facts, right? We went from starting, they announced it just generally in 365, but then we only had 2 Friday facts between in a year, basically. So they do this, and then big parts of the game are playable, and we are approaching a state where we can playtest from start to finish with an asterisk of in the most bare bones way possible. So the first playthrough was pretty interesting. So essentially, Kovarex tried to give it a playthrough. It was happening over the span of 7 months, and it was nowhere near possible to actually play from start to finish at the beginning of it. But the idea was to try to push through by filling in all gaps between the individual pieces of functional content as I move forward in the game. Right, I started and the planetary logistics part wasn't functional yet, so I had to expand the factory and test other things like elevator rails and quality before going to space. Since I built bigger on Novice and wanted to test elevator rails and the train system more, I was more motivated to improve it. This is when I made train interrupts and cloned and made the train group. So again, I think it's pretty cool just to kind of see like at what stage in their playtesting and iterations and stuff the certain mechanics actually came into play, right? And then we go down to space logistics. So the first version of space logistics was obviously horrible, as you had many unrelated buildings on the space platform called space platform ejectors. And these are all, of course, placeholder graphics as well. But you can see, it gets pretty messy. Working with this was a pain, similar to the way things were supplied into space, which was described later. So it was janky, but hey, it was something we could build on. So each ejector was an individual building with independent inventory and semi-independent requests. So I think, yeah, like you were like independently sending resources or sending out resources from these or something. It definitely seems kind of overcomplicated. But we moved down again, all placeholders, but hey, we have flames now, right? Pushing through planets. So Vulcanus was the first planet to test, as it didn't have very specific technical requirements compared to other planets like Gleba with agriculture and Fulgara with its lightning. And you can see, again, fairly bare bones, but I mean, hey, they got lava and stuff going here. These are very prototype graphics of elevator rails. Gleba was the second one so this is, again, interesting. So Gleba was apparently the second planet that was like at a stage that they could test, despite it actually being the third one shown to us and seemingly still the least finished. That's just an interesting observation to me. It seems like probably it's going to be the most complicated, maybe, just from what we've seen in the fact that, it's kind of like taken so much longer than the others. Regarding the landing pads, you can see one of the problems of the original design, where every landing pad was individually accepting stone cargo from space. This had 3 main problems. So yeah, basically they I don't know if it's here. It must be here, maybe. But yeah, so basically you could just build a bunch of landing pads, and they were like all individually accepting items from space platforms. And it just got to be kind of a mess. We also see some very interesting prototype stuff here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's spoilers in this image. I actually didn't look too close at this image, but you know, these plants all look kind of wonky again. They're very placeholder. This is still like 2 years ago. And they go into say, since landing pads were not logistic providers, we tend to have this repeated pattern of landing pad, pads provider, chest everywhere. Since you could build landing pads everywhere, it felt a little bit too cheesy to be able to drop items to space anywhere needed. This is one of the reasons why now we have just one expandable landing pad per planet. So I do remember them mentioning this before, and I think I had a concern with this. I still maybe have a tiny bit of a concern, but there were other people voicing, you know, worries about this on the subreddit post for this Friday Facts, and Kovarex did say like, yeah, it is just one and it's capped, but the cap of like how much you can import is so massive it shouldn't be an issue. And I do trust what he says, because we actually see lower down, we'll see here that the goals for his base were actually pretty insane. So he definitely has done some testing with mega basing, which is good to see. So you can see bare bones global with early pads and way too many harvestable plants. So then we go down to Fulgara, was the third planet to visit with its original base game-like design. It's a place where I started to be skeptical more later. And you can see, yeah, it looks very similar to Novice. Long story short, 7 months later, 370 hours clocked in the save, I was finally able to get to the end screen. Shortly after that, we had an Office of Land party where we tried to do a multiplayer playthrough to get more feedback and also test the multiplayer. We played from Monday to Friday, and we barely got to the last planet, quite exhausted the last day, never really being able to finish the whole thing. So obviously, this is way too long, right? Like, it took them in multiplayer bit more than a week, because they didn't even finish, I guess, to do this, and it was just a huge drawn out thing. It took Kovarex 370 hours, you know, to complete it. So this is pretty dang long, right? I think typically, like, I think the average now is around 40 hours, I want to say, to complete the vanilla game, like, just for, you know, like, somewhat new player, or, you know, even some new players. But yeah, like 40 hours I think is generally kind of a median of like how long it may take. So 370 hours is obviously significantly more than that. The first iteration and conclusion. So basically, after doing all that, they had some good and bad, you know, information to go off of. Good, because now we had a base and it could only get better from here on out. The graphics, sound, and music would be updated, etc. Bad, because I had some serious doubts about the expansion pack concept, mostly explained here. There were a huge number of problems, and while the vast majority had a clear solution, some of them were different. So, yeah, like I said, it was too long, it was too repetitive. This is before the Fulgara and other changes. Some of the mechanics were too clunky, annoying to use when scaled up, space platform logistics and trains. The sheer scale of all things needed to be done was just too big, and it often felt too grindy. And I do remember them mentioning, I was probably in this Friday Facts, where things just felt too grindy, so they had to do some big changes, right? The conclusion was a very specific set of guidelines for the rest of the development. The game progression needs to be faster, mostly by lowering the cost of stuff, reducing unnecessary recipe steps, and increasing quality of life capabilities. The planet-specific gameplay needs to be more distinct. This is when the Fulgara change was done. Volcanus was altered to get basic resources from lava to avoid copper, iron, stone mining sites, and gleba plants you harvested from were basically reduced the amount of plants from 12 to 2, which is huge. That's a huge reduction. But yeah, 12 I think is way too many. That's getting into like Pianodin's, Bob's Mods territory. We also allowed the usage of planet-specific producers to be exported to other planets. So apparently this was not a thing from the get-go, and I'm so glad they made this decision. You know, so things like EM Plan and Foundry and stuff are not locked to their own planet, right? You unlock them there, but you can take them elsewhere. The third year, so this was just last year, the grind. I played the game from start to finish once again. It took 240 hours, which is still way too much, but it needs to be considered that I went quite heavy with factory side, trying to get almost everything legendary quality with the goal of 1 million science per minute. This is insane. So this is what I was talking about like a couple minutes ago, is this is crazy. Like, I honestly am pretty skeptical that this could actually be done, unless you want to be at like 4 UPS, but maybe it can. You know, in the 2.0 simulation playthrough that I've done with Colonel Will, and he's done another one or two since then, they hit like 50 or 60k science per minute. To be fair though, there was still stuff missing. Like there's no belt stacking in the simulation because it's too hard to mod in properly to match the game. So we will have belt stacking, of course, and other stuff. And there's more things we haven't been shown, and I think some of that is mentioned here shortly. But yeah, so this is obviously a huge goal. Maybe Corvex will get there before release though. It was shorter than the original 370 hours, and mainly it felt more fun. So most of the work probably went into thousands of little things, but let me name a few more significant changes. So basically, they need a better way to understand the new parts of the game, so they came up with the Factorio PDO, which is the in-game like reference manual kind of wiki within the game, right? So that's huge. They made better, more powerful triggers for like tooltips and stuff. Gameplay and UI, we finished the first iteration of Gleba Enemy to be shown later. Okay, so here we go. So here's a little bit of a like kind of Easter egg of sorts. Is there is an enemy on Gleba, which I mean probably 99% of us guessed that based on that Friday facts. However, the way they word this, and I could just be reading into this, but the way they word this, it is one enemy. Like it is like the boss, right? It's like one big boss enemy. But I don't know, maybe Coverax just means it's like the enemy type. It's, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But honestly, from reading the Gleba Friday facts, it did sound like some huge, like, boss enemy that you have to, deal with. So, I think maybe that's a little more confirmation towards that. And we made further improvements to the remote view as it is used more and more in the expansion. Logistics routes were done and properly integrated in the refactored version of Space Logistics. So the update of what is needed in the system, import planet platform export plans could be done by a single user action, which is awesome. And then the asteroid catcher, right, the like arms that shoot out that are like super funny to watch. That was a big deal because we were very conscious about its logic being extremely light on performance. And then yeah, seeing it in game was a huge milestone. Graphics, the looks of planets were getting more into official shape. The space platform wasn't just gray squares anymore. Sound and effects, most machines became fully animated. And then this is back when they resumed the weekly Friday Facts, which I think was like August of last year or so. And they felt they had enough to show weekly until release, which we're getting close to now. So finally, we are this year, things coming together. In the fourth year, they finished the second game design iteration. More and more team members also went ahead and finished their playthroughs, which is getting more smooth. After that, we made even more shortenifications, which resulted in the second LAN party playthrough we had a week ago to be finished on day 4 without even trying too hard to speedrun. This was a clear sign that following the guidelines they created those 2 years ago, helped, and it only was not only was possible to finish playing the expansion faster, it also felt more fun. Basically, the main issue was that in the last days, we weren't able to continue the multiplayer with everyone connected. While having 60 UPS, we had to slow the game to 85%. So this is somewhat concerning that they hit performance issues at this point. I don't know how big they were actually building. But yeah, maybe they make some improvements. But honestly, I still think that overall it's still going to be more performance efficient and optimized than the current 1.1 we play on. That's just kind of my feeling based on everything. At least if you build to the same, if you build to the same scale as you do now, it absolutely will be. But I think, obviously you can build things so much bigger with quality and belt stacking, all that other stuff, and the new machines. You certainly will be hitting UPS limits. I am curious at what point, like how big they actually built their base when this happened. So the current state, and now we get into some really juicy, cool images, right? So the fluids, which we just saw last week, probably like my top 2 Friday Facts and announcement. You could probably tell I was super excited. I was still thinking about it. I'm so excited. And the fact that trains with molten metals have way higher iron density compared to iron copper plates makes it possible to make in-game setups very different compared to the base game in-game, right? So essentially, Kovarik says, I like how the Foundry is super strong on its own. It can alter the way you build, but it only works well as long as you have calcite, right? Because you need the calcite to actually turn the metal into liquids. And so I don't know if everyone is clear on this, but basically you can, as you can see here, you can take ore and turn it into liquid. It doesn't have to be from lava. Like obviously on Volcanus, the only way to get the plate is from lava, but since you can bring these elsewhere, you can use ore, right? But you need calcite regardless. So they do need to input calcite. And man, like, doesn't this look good? This, I'm gonna be honest, probably not. not something that does want to hear. And I don't want to open a can of worms that may delay things, but this kind of actually makes like the beacons look uh, pretty tiny, pathetic. Not pathetic, and like the graphics are bad, but just like the same with the like normal mining drills. These things are so huge and towering, and obviously not everything can be this size because these are supposed to be super advanced machines from other planets. But just generally, it just kind of looks like funny where it's like you have these machines and then these tiny little beacons in here, doing their work. And like same if you were to place a normal mining drill down here as well, it would look so little and kind of mundane compared to these. But these just look so good and they're like huge, right? And super powerful. So that's kind of why that is. With the usage of calcite, big mining productivity, and foundries, it gets very efficient to turn the mining outposts into molten metal exporters. And yes, this is definitely something I think that's going to be important if you want to scale up. This is what Colonel Will and I have been discussing with the 2.0 sim is, like if you want to scale up to like super mega base, it's definitely going to make sense to mine directly into foundries and then just turn it into molten metals and then train that back. Or with the new fluids, you maybe could just pipe it the whole way, although that's slightly cheaty and stuff. You can play however you want, but that's an option too. But basically, it just allows them to be like way more condensed and stuff. So I think this will be certainly something that is more common for like mega base builds, right? You wouldn't necessarily need to do this on like a normal playthrough. You could, but for scaling up, I think this will be very necessary. And man, this is such a glorious sight. So foundries and electromagnetic plants are good friends in the in-game. Notice that each of the outputs is 8 stacked green belts, so it is equivalent to 85 and a half, or sorry, 85.3 fully compressed blue belt production, right? Like this gives you an idea of how powerful quality is. And I actually saw several people in the Reddit and forum replies to this Friday Facts saying like, oh, I was skeptical about quality, but after seeing the numbers you can do with it, I'm feeling more happy about it. And I'm glad to hear that because like this is how I felt about it from the get-go. This is why I love quality so much. Like look what you can do. 85 blue belts worth of production from this. Like that's insane. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. It may get kind of blurry. That you can't actually increase the size of these, but yeah, so it's kind of hard to tell because it's a vertical perspective, but you can kind of tell on the sides here that these are stacked and then they're green belts, which is, I forget the exact speed. Shoot. I should have double checked, but the exact speed of a fully stacked green belt, like the throughput, is insanely high. It's 85 blue belts, but like actual numbers per minute or per second, it's crazy high, right? And that's just from this little bit of stuff. And you can see the beacons kind of scattered around here as well. You probably could even rearrange this to fit some more beacons if you really wanted to. But yeah, so this is just crazy levels of production. And then we come down to this glorious, terrifying rail junction monstrosity. So this is one more building typically combined with foundry like okay. So this is actually another kind of Easter egg. So there's apparently another building combined with foundry and electromagnetic plants, which will be covered later. So this is something we haven't seen yet. This is not the thing, the bio plant thing from Gleb. I forget the exact name. Sorry. But there's apparently another building that we haven't found yet. I don't know if it's on a 4th planet or maybe somehow unlocked later on one of the other planets or something. But yeah, there's another building we haven't seen yet. Look at this rail thing. And there's also a huge kind of little spoiler down here we'll look at. But this rail just, oh man, it looks so good, right? It's really scary. I mean, the good news is for me that I can't be hit if I just run through here because I can't be hit when things are on elevated rails. But yeah, you can just tell, like, I mean, I'm just trying to, like, follow the lines and dissect this, but, oh, man, this is, like, one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is the elevated rails. You can, like, the fact you can build these split-offs from, you can see these two come off and wrap around and then go underneath. I mean, if they wanted, they could connect to another elevated one. I think this, never mind. I was going to say I think this is just for, like, visual, just to make it look crazier, but this does actually have a purpose because this rail passes over these and then merges back down here without having to actually cross this rail, and you can just have these crazy throughput situations of trains. This is magnificent. I love this so much. Okay, so now we come down here. This is insanely blurry. I know. I don't. Okay, actually, I think it's getting worse. This is okay, hold on. But I do want to show you this. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that there, and then we're gonna come over here, and we're gonna go this way, and maybe it will work. So yeah, if we come down and look again, this is super blurry, but we can see all the science packs here. So we have red, green, blue, military. Sorry, red, green, military, blue, purple, yellow, space, and we have 4 more, right? So that would be 11, 2, 4, 6, 11. That's 5 more. Can't count. People are saying 12, and one, I think it was, who was it? It was maybe V or someone a while ago said in Discord that there were 12 science packs. I don't actually see a 12th one here. So I do wonder if maybe, and I think I saw a mention somewhere else that maybe they scrapped the 4th planet they were going to do. I don't know. Don't take my word for it. But I don't see a 12th pack here. And I read somewhere, I think it was a recent Friday Facts, where they were like, originally we had 4 new planets, but we had to reduce it down to 3 or something. So maybe there isn't actually a 12th pack and a 4th planet. But even so, so there's 4 new packs, right? There's this is Vulcanus. This one is probably Gleba. This one is Fulgara. And then we have this one, which is something else. Or can I not count? Is this actually 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, well, apparently... Oh, yeah, well, they're, like, in different placements, though. So this one don't have red. Okay, so maybe this is not the best indication. It's super blurry. I don't know. It's hard to decipher. I think we'll go with this, where it's definitely 11. Maybe there's a 12th one. I don't see any of these having a 12th one, unless it's like some color that super blends in here. But yeah, so we just kind of get a little bit of a look. Just wanted to show you that. But we're going to come back out here. We're going to close that and come back here. Okay, so we come down and we can see here that this is mining coal going directly into grenade production, I believe. Yeah, so the low stack size of coal and stone combined with inability to melt it makes their processing special in a way, right? So you can see these crazy setups you have to do for this grenade production. And then since you can't push simple grid-like blueprints in the early stage of Vulcanus, combined with the difficult terrain, it makes unique outposts. Very true. Using elevated rails again, which is super nice. And you can see the terrain is obviously, I would say, pretty much completely fleshed out compared to their initial iterations. We did have a whole Friday Facts on this where it looked good too, but just thought I'd mention it. And yeah, you can see the insane scale. This is crazy. There's 12, there's what, 48 plus, what was 60 maybe? At least 60 silos in this screenshot. Now, keep in mind, rocket cost was massively reduced, right? So this isn't your current rocket cost is 60 rocket silos. It was massively reduced, but still, yeah, you can see this could give you a glimpse of the possible scale of the game at the very end. These bulk inserters, what used to be stack inserters, are being mass transported to another planet as an ingredient to create legendary stack inserters. So, literally all of these rockets are transporting inserters. I just want that to sink in for a minute. This is insanity to a level that I absolutely love. We're using 60 rocket silos right now to transport bulk inserters to be used to try to make legendary stack inserters. I think. Well, that seems backwards. Oh, no, that is because bulk inserters, they were renamed. So bulk inserters are what are the current stack inserters in 1.1, and then stack inserters are the new stacking ones. Right. But yes, so that's pretty cool. And then the third iteration. So third iteration is happening right now. The main focus is on the vast amount of feedback we got from last LAN party. It's going to be focused on 2 main categories, bugs and QoL optimizations. And then here is some awesome big news, guys. Since things are getting stable and I'm starting to be pretty happy with the state of the game now, we are ready to give a specific date of Space Age release, which we will tell you next week. So next week is going to be a huge Friday Facts. I mean, it could just be one line, but it's still huge news because we will get an actual release date. Now, there are a few things I really want to cover quickly. So Arendelle made a post on the forum discussion for this Friday Facts doing some clarification, saying that the first gameplay draft was made in less than 2 weeks and was a vertical slice for the entire expansion. It was a sort of blue sky concepting stage where Arendelle could try a lot of different things to see what sticks. To make things more difficult, though, there was a lot of initial reluctance to have alternate recipes for things because recyclers had already been added to reprocess items of quality. This means that the first versions couldn't have many shortcut recipes, and that resulted in the need for a lot of the basic resources to still be on most planets, right? So this is meaning like this was meaning that in this iteration or in stuff that like iron and copper or we're on all planets and stuff, but then you still need most of the same processing chain as novice in addition to planet specific ones. Fortunately, that stance has been relaxed for a lot of things, right? So then the team opened up a bit more to having these alternative recipes, like getting iron and copper from lava and stuff like that. And then Arendelle finishes by saying also some of the things that were cut from the first version made it back, and eventually like resources from lava, which is interesting that they actually brought some stuff back in that they had removed initially, and I think it's better for it. So this is a long Friday Facts. This was a long video. I'm gonna cut it here in a second, but I would like to hear you guys' thoughts with all of this, and then I would like your guesses just for fun because I don't know, I like doing this. I would like to hear your guesses in the comments below what you think the release date will be that we get next week. I would imagine someone's gonna get it right if enough people guess. But here's my take, right? From the information provided in this Friday Facts alone, like just seeing the journey they took and the stage they're at, and then like how they say this here, I can guess with 99% confidence the expansion is coming out this year. And I know it's a very broad thing, but I have seen more and more people saying like, I don't know if we're gonna get it this year, And I was wondering, a bit, but like, I can say almost 100% we're getting it this year. And drilling down further than that, even based on what we've read here and what we've seen, I can say with probably, I can guess, obviously these are guesses, I can guess with 95% certainty that it's going to be within the next 3 to 4 months. What would that be? We're almost in July, August, September, October. Yeah. So I would say in the next 3 to 4 months with like 90% certainty, I would guess. I'm going to throw my guess out there. My guess is I'm going to be a total nerd and pull up the calendar so I don't get dates wrong because I'm done with dates. I'm going to say either September 29th or October 1st. Those are my guesses. I know it's two guesses, but those are my guesses for the date we're going to get for when it's released. But yeah, for anyone worried that this is was going to be like pushed to 2025, I don't think that's happening. Like, this doesn't seem right. If we're getting a date now and based on, how Kovarex says this, I think it's within months that we're going to get the expansion. So this is super exciting. Fantastic. I really enjoyed this. I know it was a long sit through, and I'm sorry you had to endure through my subpar reading. I mentioned before, but I am dyslexic, so sometimes I get a little stuck. But I love seeing this journey. Really, really enjoy this, this type of behind the scenes stuff. The technical stuff, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's bad. For me, a lot of it goes over my head, so I don't get as much enjoyment from it. But this type of behind the scenes stuff, like the actual development journey and, high level things, is super interesting to me, and I think it gives us a good perspective, right? And the last thing I'm going to close with, and this is similar to what I closed with last week, this is another example of why this team is so damn good, guys. The fact they play through their own game in its entirety multiple times to figure out what parts work and what parts don't work, I think is extremely rare nowadays. You can just tell by all these games that are released now that are complete buggy messes, horrible progression, horrible story, whatever it may be, right? You can tell that these people who made the game did not play the game. They just coded the stuff and that's it, right? But that's not the case with Factorio, and that's why it's so damn good, because they actually play their own game and not just play the one feature that individual person builds, right? Like maybe some of these other games, no, the dev will like, have to work on some aspect of it and they'll like play test that one aspect briefly. But no, like they have entire playthroughs, the whole team and as individuals, start to finish, figure out like, is this good progression? Does this make sense? Is it too grindy? Is this too complicated? Not complicated enough? What is new stuff we can add? And they actually figure this out by playing as we as players would play. And that's just honestly amazing and I think super rare nowadays. So, I just want to give like more credit to this, that they actually take the time to do this and also enjoy their own game, right? Like they clearly also enjoy just playing the game, which is fantastic. So I'm gonna close it out there. I know it was a long one, but thank you so much everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you're excited as I am for a release date next week and seeing all this cool stuff, definitely drop a like on the video. If you are new and have not subscribed yet, definitely subscribe to keep up with future content, and make sure you get all the up-to-date info on Friday Facts and the expansion as we get closer and closer to it here. And yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on everything else here. Thoughts on science packs. Is there a 12th one or not? Did I miss anything? Any other Easter eggs maybe I overlooked? But yeah, as always, thank you so much everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.